there are a couple areas where there's some change going on, but I'm not sure how permanent it is. So maybe you can tell me what your thoughts are. The first is this whole consumer thing. And I think the question is, and maybe I can ask you your response, because I get different answers. Have consumers been so traumatized by what's happened in the financial markets, their equities, their homes, that they're going to behave like people did after the Great Depression, suffer this sort of major cultural change where they cut back? Or are Americans going to go back and act like Americans? They like to spend, right? So let me ask you, who thinks that they've suffered this major cultural change and that we are going to act very, very differently going forward? All right, who thinks they're going to be acting more like Americans, spend more? Interesting.
I bet that 10% that was unemployed is going to be acting differently.
Yeah, you're right, you're right. But as you get the unemployment rate down, eventually. But yeah, you're right. I think that. But I mean, I usually get about a half responses usually. But although I asked the California bank officials, and guess how they voted? They voted very much like you. I guess maybe they're looking out to get those consumer credit cards out. By the way, I'm getting a lot more credit card solicitations. Are you all getting those?
Yeah. Never stop.
Never stop, okay. And then the other issue is this whole thing about the green economy. And that's the question, we have a lot going on with alternative fuels, and in San Diego it's a big deal out there in California. But the question is that sort of a fad? Is it going to continue? And I think that's still to be determined. Now there are some things that have not changed, some good and some for the bad. First of all, I think that social contracts are going to resist change dramatically. That's where I'm very worried, whether or not you can really get these reforms going forward in the peripheral countries of Europe. In our own state local governments, I was up with the advisory council for our state controller in California, where we're grappling with this $20 billion deficit. And the pension issue there is very significant, as it is at every single local state government. And basically, contractually, as Eric would know, you can't change retroactively pension benefits in their escalation. So you can only affect going forward. But it remains to be seen whether or not you can really cause a coming together of interest and a breaking of some of these social contracts that we've, for instance, made in this country, where we guarantee basically everyone sort of maximum levels of health care, and whether you can break those social contracts. Another area I think is going to remain is protectionism. We were on this track of free world trade, a lot of bilateral trade agreements, but there still seems to be a lot of protectionism, and I doubt that that's going to go away. The tax system. Every once in a while people come up with, talking about a tax system that we can simplify. Forget it, I think that's a non-starter. But finally, the one good thing that I think is still here is, despite all the problems of credit and regulation, the entrepreneurial spirit still persists. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs and small businesses which continue to thrive in this country, and fortunately I think that will survive. Lastly, a few comments and observations on economists, our responsibilities. And I've done a lot of thinking about this. What are the things that we do right and what are the things we do wrong? So these are sort of 10 takeaways. First, we need to use more imagination. More imagination. Now, I know, I didn't think that there would be a major volcano in Iceland. And I did not think that, BP would have this major explosion in the Gulf. But there are a lot of things that, we need to be more creative and more imaginative in thinking through scenarios and developments. When the home equity issue fell, a lot of us, looked at, say, well, it's a small part of the overall market. It can't really, have that big of an impact. Federal Reserve, we also had that view. In the Greece situation, 3% of the economy, could it really have that big of an effect? So we need to use more imagination. Second, resist the herd. It's very hard to, we look at the median forecast, and it's very hard to be, an outlier, unless you're like a headline grabber. There's some, economists, they like to be out there. At one point, they will be right. In 1 year, they'll win the best economic forecast prize. The next year, they'll be the worst. So, they kind of like to, these extremes. But if you look at most forecast surveys, maybe because we all use the same models, there's not very little deviation between the mean forecast. We're just we like this kind of safety of the herd, and I think we need to be more independent in our thinking. Third, I know our employers like to get point estimates. They want to know, what is your GDP forecast? 3.2, 2.8. They don't like this range thing. But you've got to tell them that the real world is not that accurate. The data is not that accurate, and we got to understand standard deviations. We got to tell them, this is what we're able to do in a reasonable area, and you've got to understand that this is the sort of the range you're looking at, as opposed to this point estimate thing. Fourth, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think, we probably, I don't know if this is true or not, but if there's more uncertainty than there ever is, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And there's, at least 2 or 3 scenarios that could take place. I've given you one, but, I could give you a couple others, and we need to know, what are the most likely alternatives, what are the probabilities of those, and then we need to track them. So, if it looks like, in 2-3 months your forecast is not working out, you've got to know which numbers are, tell you that your other alternative is one that seems to be shaping up, and then you need to tell your clients, your employer, that, these are the things we've been watching, and now it looks like this is the track we're on. You've got to be willing to change your forecast. You've got to tell your employer that they better have a couple of different budget scenarios that will depend on how you come up with your numbers.